Hi, my name is Bob Cotton. I'm the test architect at Rally Software. I head up our software testing group. We use Selenium to do our testing of our application internally, and we've built a Ruby framework around it that sort of has some aspects of an API, some DSL-like things, and it's largely modeled after what Simon, I think, coined as the page class model. So we have models of our pages in the app. So what I'm here to show you today is some things that we've teased out of this application in Ruby using some fun Ruby metaprogramming stuff. So just to level the field for those in the audience who are not familiar with Ruby, because the rest of this depends solely on some understanding of some fancy Ruby stuff. So here is an example of a pretty typical getter and setter in Java. You've got a private instance string and a get and a set in Java. In Ruby, the getter and setter looks like this. The setter has an equal sign after the attribute name. The getter is just the name of the attribute. You can abbreviate this in Ruby using attr reader and attr writer. That is functionally equivalent to writing out the getter and setter in Ruby, and you get it one more step for free. If you have both a reader and a writer, you can say attr accessor, and you get both. So we took this and applied it to our page classes, and came up with something that looked much like this. Assume you have a login page that has a username, a password, and a checkbox on it for the Remember Me. So I created the thing called element accessor, and there are element reader and element writer to go along with it, and associated with that a set of adapters for a variety of HTML input types, input elements, drop-down boxes, checkboxes, radio buttons, and stuff like that. Also, we can build buttons on the screen. So this allows you to provide a very Ruby-esque way of modeling your page classes. So it allows your tests, when you're using this class, to look something like this. So you have setters, getters, and the button class provides you a click button name as a result. The implementation of this for attr accessor, so element accessor is simply the combination of defining both element reader and element writer. And as an example, an element reader might be defined in this way. So using the define method in Ruby, we are able to programmatically create the method on the class for the setter and the getter for this particular element, and you pass into that element an adapter. There are many adapters that are in this framework. The ones that we've written to begin with are the Selenium adapters. This is very similar to the stuff that Apple and Santiago were showing yesterday, the adapter classes that they have. It's pretty interesting that you can do something very similar to the way the XML configuration files that they were showing us yesterday. The other interesting thing, instead of doing Selenium adapters for this, you could provide adapters for water, for Frankenstein, for WebDriver, and all have a very similar look and feel and flavor, if not exactly syntactically correct, and then replace the underlying driver on the fly and use the same models for all of that stuff. Ideas that I got from Apple and Santiago yesterday were things of putting in wait for elements or Ajax-y like stuff that we had built into our framework. They had those as adapters on their classes. So this might be an enhancement to that I've recently adapted as a result of seeing their talk yesterday, to say, well, you might want to configure your input element differently based on the individual inputs, and you could have that done on the fly. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Strike three.